Welcome to the Writers Clinic, coming to you from Kahawa Sukari Estate, Kahawa Sukari Avenue, 1335. In today's episode, we are going to look at what great writers say about the art of writing. There is an interesting question that would-be writers ask. The question is, how does one write a bestseller? For them, it is just not enough to write a publishable book, but the book must be a bestseller. The idea and belief in many of these would-be writers is that if they published a bestseller, then their wallets would become healthier. Many of these writers who wish to become bestseller writers never really get round to writing a publishable piece. I would like to quote one famous writer who has said so much about the art of writing, and that is none other than the great Sidney Sheldon. Sidney Sheldon is one of the greatest writers in the world. And among the books that Sidney Sheldon wrote include The Naked Face, The Other Side of Midnight, The Sands of Time, and Doomsday Conspiracy. Sidney Sheldon was once asked this question. He first responded by saying he did not know the answer. But he goes further to advise that a would-be writer should not dream of writing a bestseller. He notes that when someone deliberately sets out to write a bestseller, what he is really saying is that he is going to try to write a book that will appeal to everyone. In essence, he is looking for the lowest common denominator. But to try to appeal to everyone might be fatal, because many who resolve to write a bestseller end up appealing to almost no one. Sidney Sheldon further asserts that every good writer writes to please himself or herself, not to please others. A writer starts with an idea that excites him, develops characters that interest him, and then writes his story as skillfully as he knows. If one worries about quality rather than success, then success is much more likely to follow. But perhaps the most intriguing question is, how does one get started as a writer? This question is always on the lips of those who have nursed the dream of writing. The best response I know to this question came from Sinclair Lewis. Sinclair Lewis is also one of the most respectable writers. After his Pulitzer Prize for the book entitled Main Street, Sinclair was besieged by requests to speak to writing classes at various universities. He turned them all down until one day, after frantic impugning from Ivy League college, he consented to speak. At the appointed time, the auditorium was packed with eager would-be writers, waiting to hear words of wisdom from the master. Sinclair Lewis strode out on the stage and gazed upon his audience. He stood there for 60 seconds of absolute silence and then said, and I quote, "Why aren't you home writing?" And he turned and walked off the stage. Sidney Sheldon has more to say about writing. He says that it is important to set up a disciplined schedule. You do not have to write only when the muse sits on your shoulders. It is unlikely that your project will ever get completed. He notes that there are two kinds of writers: those who want to write and those who have to write. Wanting to write is not enough, for it is a painfully difficult profession filled with rejections, disappointments, and frustrations. Having to be a writer is something else again. Sidney Sheldon says that if that is the case with you, then you deserve pity. You deserve pity because you are without choice. There is no way for you to escape from the agonies of despair, of creation, for you will find that what you write will never be good enough to satisfy you. You will always be striving to reach that impossible perfection. You should also be envied because you are going to reach heights that you never dreamed possible. You will create your own exciting worlds and put people in those worlds, and create wonderful creatures and put in those worlds. You will burden them with sorrows and disasters. You will fill them with joy. You will give them love, and sometimes you will destroy them. And so, when you have created that magic world with characters that move and breathe and feel joy and sorrow, then you will have come as close as any mortal can to reaching out and touching the stars. Nevertheless, B.J. Chute has ever more interesting observations on being a fiction writer, or rather being able to create these magical worlds. Chute was once asked what makes him a fiction writer, and he had a host of qualities that one needs to have in order to be a fiction writer. Chute says that the first quality you need is imagination. He says that imagination is necessary to the writer as the spinning of web is to a spider, and just as mysterious. It defies analysis, and it has been quite properly called the creative impulse. Imagination, he says, cannot be created, but it can be fostered and this fostering is part of the writer's duty. It is not enough to congratulate yourself on having been gifted with imagination, though it is certainly a major cause of rejoicing. The imagination, like the intellect, has to be used, and a creative writer ought to exercise it all the time. B.J. Chute also notes that the second quality that is essential for writing is empathy. The dictionary defines empathy as mental entering into the feeling or spirit of a person or thing. One needs this to produce believable characters. The third quality that Chute notes is that of style. Style could be defined as the way in which a thing is said. Style does not exist apart from the story, and if 5 people tell an identical story, each one will tell it in a different style. The best style will produce the best story, and the listeners will turn to it, even if they do not know why they turn to it. The fourth quality that Chute notes is patience. Patience in a writer, he says, is many things, but most of all, it is characterized by concern for the words on the page. Thus, one should find the right words, and such words can be evasive, very slow to come. At this juncture, the quality of patience will spell the difference between disaster and survival. And so, creating fiction does not simply mean buying 2 reams of paper, a pen, and then you sit down and write. It is a serious venture. Thousands of masterpieces are talked about, but they are never written, and they are never published. The idea is simple. Books must be written, not talked. It is therefore important for would-be writers, or rather aspiring writers, to study what established writers have said about the art of writing. Their words could be inspiring to many who believe they have a story to tell but lack patience, empathy, and focus. In conclusion, I would like to say that do not waste time talking about a story you want to write. Just start writing it now. That brings us to the end of the Writers Clinic, coming to you from Kawasukari Estate, Kawasukari Avenue 1335. On behalf of my crew, Pambi and Neka, I would like to welcome you again and again for other episodes of this exciting series of episodes.